Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Dorn Geek Star Wars: The Expanded Universe Book Talk. I am your I am your host, Dorn Geek. Today, we are going to finish up the Jedi Academy trilogy. We're going to do the last book, Champions of the Force. Just a wonderful title. I love that title. It sounds like it's the end of a wonderful series, and it really is. So let's get right into it. Champions of the Force book talk. Here we go. That's right. We are talking Champions of the Force, the final book in the Jedi Academy trilogy, published in September of 1994. This was, for me personally, this was such a long wait. I got the first book, or not the first book, the second book. I got the middle book, like a day after it came out or something like that. And I read it within 3 days, and then I had to wait all these months to get Champions of the Force, written by the wonderful Kevin J. Anderson. I mentioned in my book talk of the first one, he has some author quirks, but what author doesn't? Kevin, if you're out there watching this, I really enjoy all of your writing. You really made me hold on to Star Wars in a way that nobody else did. Timothy Zahn, I'm sorry. I know most people feel that way about your books. I feel that way about Kevin's. Let's look at the timeline. Let me get off this nostalgia train a little bit. We are still in 11 ABY, but we are getting close to the end of it here. We're about to close out this trilogy. 11 years after the Battle of Yavin. So we're 11 years after New Hope. So think about, we're 30 years after the establishment of the Empire. We're 7 years after Return of the Jedi, so we're 7 years after the end of the Empire. By the way, in the first book of this series, the fact that the Empire only lasted like 23-ish years is a thing, right? That's a significant moment for a character or two or three. 7 years after Return of the Jedi, 2 years after the Thrawn books. Already, we are moving beyond Grand Admiral Thrawn. Amazing character, really good way to start off the expanded universe, but now we're 2 years beyond that. And things have changed and things have evolved, and our characters have gone through some stuff. We're also a year after Dark Empire, after the death of the resurrected Emperor, after the defeat of the resurrected Emperor, and so we're moving beyond just the rebellion, the New Republic now, versus the Empire. Not completely moving on from it, of course, but we are moving into new eras. Okay, let's look at the ages of our heroes. Luke and Leia, the Skywalker twins. They are indeed 30 years old, getting close to 31, somewhere in there, as this story has gone along. The fact that they are 30 is significant. I also, in some sort of a little Star Wars rant at some point, I'm going to talk about what their birthday is and why I believe it's significant to decisions that were made in the movies. Okay. But for right now, let's talk about Mara Jade. You always got to talk about Mara Jade, right? Oh, Mara Jade. 28 years old, couple of years younger than the Skywalker twins. She's got her own little side quest going on kind of in this trilogy. And you'll have watched it evolve from here, and we're going to get the last little bit of it going on in this book. Han Solo is, of course, 40 years old here. You'll see him So it's weird. I'm going to say you'll see him taking on a new role in these books, even though you would think he'd already taken on that role, but not in the way that you can feel it. And in this book, you can kind of feel it with the wrong character. It's weird. The Solo twins, Jason and Jaina, they're two. They're probably a lot closer to like 2.5. Now, there is another Solo kid, but we haven't talked about him yet because too young. But Jane and Jason are 2 years old now. They're not as young as they look in that picture over the slideshow. But there are no like 2-year-old. Well, there's one, and we're gonna see. Lando Calrissian is 42 years old. He has an interesting part to play in this series. I haven't really talked about it very much. I've mentioned that he's in here and he has his own little adventure. It's another like kind of side quest thing, and it's important. And I really like this side quest. But I don't want to say too much about it. I want to leave that as kind of a mystery and a tease. And then we've got Kip Duran, who is wildly important especially in these last two books. Like in the first book, he's a character and you have to definitely talk about him and stuff, but we're still working towards making him important in the first book. In the second and third book, he is like, we have to. He's really important. Major places that we are going to talk about and visit in this book. Yavin 4 is going to be the most significant place in this book. It's not the only significant place, but definitely the most significant place. This is where, and if you've been reading the books, you'll know why. We're gonna visit Kurita in this book, and you're gonna see how Kurita is. It's been a part of things going on throughout the series, throughout the trilogy, but I haven't talked about it because it's been a very on the side thing, and it's going to get far more important in this book. So look for Kurita, look for Maw installation. I'm giving away a tiny bit. However, if you've read the first book, you already know the giveaway that I'm giving away with the image there. Maybe that spoils something for people. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling something. However, Maw installation and what's there and how significant it is, and how it rolls into this book and the story in this book. And then, of course, Coruscant. I actually didn't have Coruscant on the list for the previous book because Coruscant, while still significant and everything else, wasn't a major place that we had to talk about. You're going to have to talk about Coruscant again in this book. You're going to have to talk about Kessel again in this book. We're sort of revisiting places from the first book, bringing old things from the first book back into significance in this book. So Kessel, extraordinarily important in the first book, extraordinarily important again in Champions of the Force, this last book. So just be aware, keep things in mind, try to remember some important things from that first book. And Anoth. I don't know whether to pronounce it Anoth or Anoth, but I think Anoth kind of sounds a little better, rolls off the tongue a little bit better. Anoth is going to be the scene of drama. I guess the only way I can put it is Anoth is a scene of drama. Now, in this book, last book, it was the relationship between Kip and Exar Kun. We'll get there. That's still important. But more important in this book is the relationship between Luke Skywalker and Exar Kun. Okay. Luke is in, well, I don't know if I want to mention yet, but just know that the two of them together is going to be something to watch out for. But of course, Kip and Exar Kun. And I melded these two images and I did it very purposely the way that I did, because this is how I kind of feel about their relationship just in that picture. So I don't want to say too much more about it than just that. And then there's the relationship between Kip and a guy that, if you've read the books carefully up until this point, you might remember hearing about, but it's just been a passing thing. And that is Kip's relationship with somebody named Szeth. I'm just going to leave it at that. We have Lando and his continuing, maybe difficult to think about relationship with Mara Jade. It's not really all that difficult to think about, but there's some problematic, like just the age range is really all I'm thinking about when I'm thinking of problematic. But like Lando and Mara Jade, I guess the way I talk about it is already giving it away, so I may as well give it. It's a will they, won't they kind of thing. and it depends on whose perspective you're looking from and all that. Obviously, Lando has a different perspective from Mara, and Mara she still has a lot of baggage to deal with. So it's just keep in mind the baggage that Mara has to deal with. And then, so I've been mentioning throughout these books the relationship between Han Solo and Kip Duran, and you're going to experience this moment in particular, described in almost this exact way in this book. The image that you see there, you're going to see just it described, but it's out of context here. You will get to see the context. Let's look at more major characters and relationships. We're talking Exar Kun and Streen. You see Streen there with the little goggle things on. And there's a reason that I picked this particular image, the image of the storm, the image of Streen looking unsure of himself. And then Dalla. Grand Admiral Dalla would be really scary. Admiral Dalla, and just the whole freaking galaxy. Admiral Natasi Dalla, she has been a part of this story since the first book, but I haven't really talked about her because she's always been kind of a character in the background. And then we're going to look at a Mon Calamari named Turpfin. That is Turpfin there, and his relationship with the Empire. Okay. This is going to be a really intriguing part of this book. At least I found it to be a really intriguing part of this book. Turpfin's relationship with first the Empire and then Princess Leia Organa Solo, and who Turpfin is, what's been going on with him, how it has been affecting things, really comes to a head in this particular book. And it's something that it's possible to miss if you're reading a little too quickly or a little vaguely. And then Jane and Jason and their relationship with Luke Skywalker. Okay. This This image, I really love this image because it's the only one of a young Jacen or Jaina. That's Jacen there. And it depicts a very, very important moment. And we'll talk a little bit more about the moment. But Jaina and Jacen and how they're connected to Luke. Very important in this. And then the Jedi students. Okay. Luke's Jedi students. This is all about Luke's Jedi Academy, right? So Luke's students and Exar Kun and who they become to each other, how that changes and evolves throughout is incredibly significant. Let's talk about our major events. First event that you want to keep your eye out for is Kip's journey to Carida. I mentioned Carida was going to be an important spot this time. It's had its moments all throughout the trilogy, but it's going to be much more significant here. And Kip's journey to Carida is what makes it so important. I'm not going to say a lot about the image that's there right now, because if I do, I'll ruin something major for you guys. However, just know that Kip's journey to Carida and this image are related. And I'll leave it at that, because I think you guys, it's obvious and all that. So, then we're going to get into Luke Skywalker learning new things in a new place. This is going to be a theme that will follow us. So the problem with Luke, as far as writing goes, is even by the end of Return of the Jedi, he seems so powerful, and the ability to give him a challenge, you got to get really creative with it. It's like giving Superman villains, right? Giving him villains, you got to find a creative way to make Lex Luthor a threat, right? And then the Solo twins, Jacen and Jaina. And I keep harping on Jacen here. I'm being a little cheeky with that. But their special connection to their uncle Luke, again, that relationship between Jacen, Jaina, and Luke is going to be extremely important. And then Lando Calrissian attempting what really, really could be the most problematic venture that he's ever attempted. And I do not say this lightly, everybody, because we know Lando has had some problematic ventures. When we met him in episode 5 in The Empire Strikes Back, like, he was already like, well, I'm not a part of the Miners Guild. I don't work directly for the Empire. I've managed to stay small enough. And even then you understood that was a dangerous spot for him to put himself into. But he's that type of entrepreneur and just gambler, right? More major events. Mara's role in this story. Throughout this trilogy, Mara shows up, but she is definitely not a main character. She is a character with a side quest, and kind of, and you could argue that this storyline uses her in a lot of wrong ways, at least problematic ways. And now Mara's going to point a blaster at me for saying that. But I don't. You didn't get a lot of good use, Kevin. You didn't get a lot of good use out of Mara Jade. You could have used her back. I don't know exactly how. Now I should back off a lot, because how am I supposed to say how a character needs to be used and all that? But it was, her use is, in my opinion, a little stale throughout this trilogy. That's all. I mentioned that we're going to go to Kessel. And there's going to be really big problems in the mines, in the headquarters at Kessel. Like, just everything going on Kessel is, and wonderfully so, problematic. Okay. There is a really cool issue going on Kessel. And it has to deal with how do you deal with the natural problems on Kessel and the fact that the spice is so valuable and the fact that you don't want to just give up on Kessel, right? That'll show up. And then how do Luke's students help Luke? Okay. Now, there are problems. Again, I've mentioned Exar Kun's influence previously, but what are the students going to do to help Luke? And how do they come to the conclusion to help him? The way that they decide to help him is a really wonderful thing that actually goes all the way back to Dark Empire. And then we have the beginning of a new Jedi Order. Now, to be fair, a cohesive Jedi Order that we saw in the Old Republic and the let's call it the High Republic. I'm not sure if I want to use that term, but I will. It's not there yet, but we have the beginnings. And that is the end of the Jedi Academy trilogy. Sort of. Because the next book that we're going to talk about, the next book that I will do a book talk on, is going to be a book called I, Jedi. And it is the almost in the we're done with the Jedi Academy trilogy story. So I will see you next time. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I will talk to you next time for our next book talk, I, Jedi. May the Force be with you, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.